Today, Cursor announced they raised $900 million in a Series C, putting their valuation at like $9 billion. And with that announcement, they also decided to flex a bit by saying they have almost $500 million in ARR, and more than half of the Fortune 500 companies, including Nvidia, Uber, and Adobe, use Cursor. Now, I decided to make a story post about that, and apparently some people find it controversial still to think that if you are not using AI tools as a developer that you're falling behind in the industry. And let me tell you, I believe that it is absolutely true. If you are not someone who is, quote, AI literate and you know how to get the most out of the AI tools at your disposal, you are falling behind, and finding a job in the future will only get harder. I do think that the demand for engineering jobs will slowly decline as AI get better, but I think the thing that is more likely to take your job than AI is other developers that are really good at using AI. The problem right now is everything is super polarized. You're either on the side of you use AI to vibe code everything, or you're a purist who thinks that using AI makes you a terrible developer and it's not that good anyways. But there are a couple things that are important to understand, especially if you are trying to get a job in the foreseeable future when it comes to development. Number one, regardless of what people that have tried the AI in the past say about how bad AI is, it is damn good at coding. Like, we are getting to the point where I can ask Claude or Gemini to do something, and before maybe a couple months ago, I would have to fix or have it redo a couple things because I didn't like the way it did it, or it did it in a non-secure way. But now they're able to nail tasks without any real intervention. And it is only going to continue getting better. Secondly, it's not so much about what you think as what the people that are actually hiring engineers who have the money thinks. This year, DataCamp had a survey where they talked to some of the big leaders in Fortune 500 companies, and around 69% of them, and if you laughed at that number, you are immature, and around 69% of them said that AI literacy is essential for day-to-day work. Not only that, the market for literal prompt engineers is forecasted to grow like 20x over the next 10 years. And what surprised me the most is that there's actually right now a $300 million market for prompt engineers. Like, you can make a living just by knowing how to talk to GPT better than other people. It is becoming abundantly clear that being able to use AI is a skill in itself apart from anything else. And it just so happens that one of the biggest applications of this LLM technology happens to be programming, because it is so good at it and it is improving at an alarming rate. And to put it into even more perspective, a couple months ago, the CEO of Shopify pretty much said that using AI is mandatory for all employees in their jobs. Like, literally, if you're not using AI for day-to-day tasks at your job, you have to explain and justify why it cannot be used before you can ask for any additional resources like additional employees or staffing or even time for what you're doing. Yes, AI still makes mistakes and everyone is crazy about it, but there is undeniable value underneath all of that that is really changing the industry that we work in as we speak. And I have talked to so many people that just want to ignore it or deny that just for the sake of being a contrarian, or for the sake that they tried AI one time like a year ago, it didn't have the results that they wanted, and they just assume that it's all garbage. It is not. And whether or not this is good for software engineers is still yet to be determined. I think it definitely is harder now to get a job as a software engineer than it was in the past, just due to the sheer amount of layoffs that is happening in tech, and the amount of people that are entering the tech industry has been more than almost ever before. Something interesting I pulled in some research I was doing on Perplexity was that the demand for AI and machine learning engineers has gone up quite a bit. But in general, across the entire software engineering industry, there are around 7.4 million total job openings to 7.2 million unemployed workers. And of course, total job openings isn't the best way to quantify things, just based on the fact that a lot of those job openings might be ghost job openings, where a company will leave a job opening that has already been filled or that they don't need to fill open so that they can field a bunch of candidates in for the future when they're hiring. But the interesting thing to note is right now there's only 1.3 jobs per unemployed worker, whereas in 2022, it was almost 2 jobs for every unemployed software developer. Pair that with the numerous amount of layoffs that are happening primarily at big companies in California. It's not all bad. For example, it's never been easier in any point in history to learn how to program and become a good developer. At the end of the day, AI is a tool, at least for now, and the person that uses that tool still plays a big role. There's a very big difference in the quality of not just the code, but the product being from a senior engineer using something like Cursor or an LM to build a project than there is from a junior engineer doing the same thing. So being a really good developer still has a lot of merit. It's just a lot more competition because it's easier to become a good developer. You can literally use AI to teach you so many things about code and use it almost like an interactive tutor that completely replaces most boot camps, in my opinion, as well as any education that computer science degrees ever gave people in the first place. Speaking as someone who got a computer engineering degree with a lot of CS involved, for doing things on the actual job, I think like 4 months of talking back and forth with GPT as a tutor, you can probably get more out of that than an entire CS degree would give you in terms of what's actually useful on the job. On top of that, it's never been easier and a better time to start a startup. There are so many free resources online, including all of the Paul Graham essays, as well as all the Y Combinator videos on how to actually go about doing things like finding the right idea, how to find a co-founder, build an MVP, how to get your first couple of customers. These are all things that used to be really hard to do 10 years ago and only accessible to a handful of really good developers and people with good connections to developers that has now literally been commoditized due to AI tools for everyone to use. And I get not everyone wants to start a company. There's a lot of stigmas floating around about what it means to be a founder and all this bullshit. But honestly, nobody's asking you to start a unicorn. I've seen plenty people make a good living and retire off of just building something cool and intricate by themselves that is actually useful and solves a problem for a small handful of people, and you can just coast off that. And not to mention, when you do build things like this, it makes your applications to jobs a lot more impressive. I've talked to a ton of founders, and the way that interviewing is being done is changing as well. My new startup is literally about creating technical assessments that can assess how well an engineer uses AI to code, because that is something that founders are looking for, whether or not you are AI proficient and how you actually use the tools at your disposal. And another interesting one is a lot of people are starting to hire ex-founders or people that have tried to start something on their own, because that is one of the biggest indicators of how well you can ship and build things that people actually want, which if you're not trying to get a job at a company with more than like 500 employees or some big tech company, that is pretty much what all the smaller startups are looking for in hiring an engineer. All of these things have never been more accessible to people than they are right now in this moment, and they will continue to get more and more accessible. And I really wanted to make this video for that small percentage of people that are still highly against AI and only see it as something that can maybe auto-complete a couple lines here and there. If you really want to be convinced that people that don't know how to code well at all are doing really well in today's market by starting things on their own, all you have to do is go through the current spring batch from YC's directory and look at the founders of these companies. A lot of them are people that dropped out of university from a CS program and just vibe coded their way to a product and customers. And the most common argument to this is, oh my God, if they're vibe coding everything, eventually they're going to have some big data leak or security privacy breach and their whole company's going to go to the shits. And the response to that is a lot of the times they get funding and hire engineers that can patch these things up before it ever gets to that point. And while it's super fun being a contrarian and just wanting to shit on people that are doing well because you're a coding purist and you don't believe in AI, it's even more fun to have a stable income and to actually have a career in the future. So while there is a shit ton of hype around AI, the bubble might pop and a bunch of these new AI companies might go down the drain, the way that development works is changed for good. That is not going to revert back to the way it was. And the tools are only getting better, and that is not going to change in the future. So my recommendation is get really good with AI literacy. Use AI as a tool to get better at programming and to build things faster. You don't have to be on one side or the other where you only vibe code or you hate AI and don't want anything to do with it. And yeah, just wanted to clear this up for the people that were hating on me for talking good about AI. Just because it's a new technology threatening to completely replace us doesn't mean it's all bad. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you want to discuss all these things, I have a link to my Discord community in the description below. And I'll see you guys in the next video.